Welcome back to the DepDiv Podcast, the show where we take complicated world events, stare at them for far too long, and then ask, okay, but how did we get here? I'm your host, Maple, and today's episode is a reminder that career paths are wild, because somewhere out there, a guidance counselor once said, you could be anything you want, and Nicolás Maduro heard, bus driver or authoritarian strongman. Honestly, relatable. We've all taken wrong turns. Buckle up, this ride does not stop at democracy.
Today's profile charts one of the most dramatic glowdowns in modern politics. Nicolás Maduro, former working-class bus driver, union activist, and eventually the hand-picked successor of Hugo Chávez, which is like inheriting a house that's already on fire and saying, yes, but what if we remove the exits? His presidency, defined by economic collapse so severe it made inflation look like performance art, persistent allegations of human rights abuses, and a systematic dismantling of democratic opposition that was, let's say, enthusiastic. Elections happened, technically, opposition existed, briefly, and international isolation followed, predictably. It's a case study in how revolutionary rhetoric can curdle into authoritarian routine with fewer buses and more batons.
All right, let's get into it. To really understand the man who would, drive Venezuela's economy off a cliff, we've got to go back, way back. Before the palace, before the power, to figure out how a union organizer from Caracas became the chosen one for a revolution. So right from the get-go, you can see his path wasn't about fancy degrees or formal education. I mean, the guy never even finished high school. Instead, his entire early life was politics from the ground up. He went from being a student union president to a bus driver who then founded an illegal trade union. This tells you everything. He wasn't some academic who fell into power. He was a political organizer, a subversive one, from day one. And then comes this moment. This is a real turning point. At just 24 years old, he gets sent to Havana. And this isn't some study abroad program. He's there for a full year of intense ideological training at a top Cuban political academy. This is where he learns the playbook of the Castro regime, how to control a population, how to run counterintelligence, and most importantly, how to make sure the regime survives at all costs. This experience basically hardwired his brain for authoritarian rule. And you can see how that loyalty just became his ladder to the top. After Chávez's failed coup attempt in '92, Maduro becomes one of his most important guys on the outside. And for that loyalty, he gets rewarded with a steady climb. First, he's in the National Assembly. Then he's running the National Assembly. Then he's foreign minister, flying around the world making friends with Russia, China, and Iran. By 2012, he's the vice president. He wasn't just a yes man. He was the most loyal, most dependable guy in the room. So all that loyalty finally pays off. He inherits the kingdom. But here's the thing. He inherited a revolution built on the almost mythical charisma of one man, Hugo Chávez. Maduro got the keys to the car, but he didn't have that same magic touch with the people. And this is the moment. It's everything. A sick, dying Hugo Chávez goes on TV and basically points his finger at Maduro and says, he's the guy. So Maduro's initial claim to power, his whole legitimacy, it didn't come from his own popularity. It came as a direct order from his dying boss. He was the apostle, not the messiah.
And you can see just how shaky his position was right from the start. Look at that number, 1.5%. That was his margin of victory in the election right after Chávez died. It was so close, so controversial, it basically screamed to the world that he did not have the same hold over the country his predecessor did. He barely squeaked by.
This chart really lays it all out, doesn't it? Chávez had it made in a way. Oil prices were through the roof, funding all his programs. And he had this incredible, genuine connection with working-class Venezuelans. Maduro, he gets a tanking economy, he's got the personality of a bureaucrat, and his only claim to fame is that he was the chosen one. So, when you can't win people over with charm and cash, well, you have to find other ways to stay in charge. And here's what he did. He turned to the military. He basically made them a deal they couldn't refuse. To make up for his lack of popular support, he created this huge patronage system. He gave the generals the keys to the national piggy bank, control over ports, mines, even the food supply. He wasn't just buying their security. He was giving them a massive financial stake in his survival. Okay, so now he's got the military in his pocket. What's next? Well, now begins the slow, methodical process of taking democracy apart piece by piece. This wasn't a sudden shock, it was a step-by-step demolition job. And you can just watch him go down the checklist. In 2015, the opposition wins a huge majority in the legislature. What does Maduro do? He just gets his hand-picked Supreme Court to declare the legislature powerless. Problem solved.
Then in 2017, he decides, you know what, I'll just create a whole new legislature stacked with my supporters to make the real one irrelevant. By the 2018 election, he's just barring his main opponents from even running. It's a textbook case of how to kill a democracy from the inside.
And let's be clear, this wasn't just some political game with paperwork. The human cost was absolutely brutal. We're talking about systematic repression, with government forces and militias cracking down on any dissent. It got so bad that the International Criminal Court opened an investigation into his regime for crimes against humanity, specifically for things like extrajudicial killings and torture. Quick pause. If you're enjoying this episode, please subscribe, leave a review, and share it with a friend who says politics is boring and then immediately argues about it for 3 hours. Your support keeps this podcast alive, keeps the sarcasm calibrated, and allows us to continue explaining the world's mess without screaming directly into the void. 5 stars help. Reviews help. And if you leave a comment saying, wow, this was depressing but informative, congrats, you understood the assignment. So while Maduro is busy consolidating all this political power, the country's actual economy is just completely disintegrating. And when the legal money dries up, a regime like this has to get creative to stay afloat.
I mean, just look at these numbers. They are absolutely mind-blowing. The country's GDP shrank by 80%. 80! That's not a recession. That's an economic apocalypse. Oil production, in the country with the largest reserves on Earth, completely cratered. And the minimum wage? It eventually fell to about $1 a month. It's a total, catastrophic system failure.
So what happens when a country just stops functioning? People leave. By late 2025, a staggering 7.7 million Venezuelans had fled their own country. That's one of the biggest refugee crises in modern history. People weren't just leaving for a better job, they were running from starvation and a collapsed healthcare system.
So with the oil industry in ruins, how is the regime paying its bills? Well, according to the U.S. government, they turned the state itself into a criminal organization. The accusation is that Maduro and his top officials were running something called the Cartel of the Suns, essentially a narco-trafficking operation with the full power of the government behind it.
And the details in the U.S. indictment are just wild. It reads like the plot of a TV show. They allege that Maduro and his wife were personally running this cartel, partnering with Colombian terrorist groups to ship cocaine, using the presidential palace to protect drug runners, all of it. This changed everything. The U.S. put a $50 million bounty on his head. He wasn't just a political rival anymore. He was a wanted man. And that criminal indictment, that bounty, it set the stage for what a lot of analysts saw as a potential, very dramatic endgame. Now we're shifting into a hypothetical scenario here, exploring how this situation could have spiraled into a direct military showdown.
In this kind of scenario, things could have escalated, and fast. You can imagine a timeline starting with U.S. strikes on cartel boats. Then, the cartels get declared unlawful combatants, which basically opens the door for military action. Then comes CIA authorization, drone strikes inside Venezuela, and a full-on oil blockade. It would have become this undeclared war, with the pressure cranking up every single day.
And in that scenario, it could have all come to a head in the dead of night. A swift, surgical special forces raid. Step 1, hit critical infrastructure to sow chaos and knock out the power. Step 2, a helicopter assault on the presidential compound. And Step 3, a snatch squad goes in, grabs Maduro and his wife, and gets out. The whole thing over in less than 30 minutes. A lightning-fast operation to decapitate the regime and bring him to justice. And how would the world find out? Not through some stuffy diplomatic statement. Nope. In this timeline, the confirmation would have come from a social media post. A photo of a blindfolded Maduro in custody. A blunt, unmistakable message to the entire world. Game over. But here's the thing. Capturing the strongman? That might be the easy part. The real challenge is what comes next. Because getting rid of Maduro doesn't automatically fix Venezuela. It just creates a massive, dangerous power vacuum.
I mean, just look at this chessboard. It is a total mess. You've got Maria Corina Machado, the celebrated leader of the Democratic opposition. You've got Edmundo Gonzalez, the guy recognized as the legitimate winner of the election, but he's in exile. But then you've still got powerful people from the old regime, like the vice president who controls the spies and the defense minister who controls the guns. It's a fractured, complicated scramble for power with no easy answer.
As we wrap up, remember, history isn't just about heroes and villains. It's about incentives, institutions, and what happens when power goes unchecked for too long. Huge thanks to our producer, FireflyHaku, who somehow keeps the show running smoothly while we discuss political systems that absolutely did not.
FireflyHaku brings light, structure, and accountability, 3 things notably absent from today's episode topic. And since it is the new year, a special message to our listeners, especially the people of Venezuela. May 2026 bring you fewer strong men, more strong institutions, and leaders who fear voters more than microphones. May accountability finally catch up, may truth travel faster than propaganda, and may dictators everywhere start their year nervously refreshing the news. Happy New Year. The future belongs to people, not presidents who refuse to leave.